Have you ever heard of red light therapy? Cold plunges? What about grounding or peptides? These are all examples of a term that's taken the world by storm called biohacking. According to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, biohacking is experimentation done on oneself through a variety of drugs, treatments, or practices to improve the qualities or capabilities of life. Basically, it's using means outside of traditional medical or scientific research to try and not only make your life better, but potentially live longer. It's a controversial topic that has lots of people talking, so we decided to listen in on the conversation and provide different perspectives. I'm Sophia Hernandez, and this is the world of biohacking. This is Sandy Martin. Back in 2020, she was sick.
And not being able to have the energy to stay awake past 7 or 8 o'clock at night was devastating to me, and it was going to impact my future, my career, everything.
She spent $97,000 in a year to try to figure out the problem.
I bought an oxygen chamber. I went off the deep end because I was scared. Red light therapy, sauna. I had a helmet called the V-Light that was putting near infrared and red light into my brain. It wasn't the right approach because I didn't know the root cause of what was making me sick.
The cause? A mold infection. She says she eventually healed by biohacking. The transformation so significant, she now runs South Florida's Biohacker Expo that has more than 1,600 attendees eager to learn more about the field. In her personal life, she's seen what biohacks can do on more than one occasion. Her father has neuropathy in both feet. Sandy says doctors were unable to help him, so she used a vibrating foot bath, Epsom salt soaks, and red light.
He can raise his toes ever so slightly, and he doesn't have to kick his leg out to walk. And it took a year.
Sandy is among thousands globally who have jumped on the biohacking train. According to the business research company, the biohacking field is expected to grow to $36.41 billion in 2024. By 2032, Market US says it will be worth $83 billion.
I stepped into biohacking 23 years ago, when biohacking was starting.
John Fallacara is the CEO of Biohackers Magazine and his company Lifespanning, one of the pioneers of the biohacking movement, alongside celebrity hackers like Dave Asprey and Ben Greenfield. Fallacara identifies as a scientist and a guinea pig to the biohacking movement.
I started to use tracer trackers. I got them all from Garmin, Fitbit, and artificial intelligence at that time didn't exist. So I was making all calculation, all models on Excel sheets, and trying to figure out how I can improve my life and my performances, my VO2 max, my HRV, my heartbeat, my rest, and everything.
His day consists of cold plunges, saunas, working for 90 minutes and then walking, and usage of different devices. He's 57, but says because he spent years experimenting, his biological age is 33.
I'm not a fan of living forever. I'm more a fan of optimizing life.
Jean says he has limits to what he will do.
I would never take a risk of, you say I'm going to put 220 volts in your brain because you're going to be in delta wave in 2 minutes. Well, okay, no, I'm not going to do that.
But with a simple search on social media, one will find thousands of videos of people of all backgrounds and ages trying different techniques to try and achieve what Jean has already done. And while many will praise its results, there are pushbacks to the movement, one of which is the lack of proven research that would indicate that these practices do in fact work. It's what causes doctors like Nir Barzilai to be skeptical.
The things that are bothering us is people are doing things without doing what we call clinical study. And that's very important. And it's very important to educate the people that when you hear something exciting and somebody advertised that you live forever, okay, what is the evidence? And the evidence is not what they say.
Barzilai is the president of the Academy of Health and Lifespan Research and the director of one of the biggest global centers for biology of aging. His fear is that people like you and I are just blindly listening to people who call themselves biohackers.
If somebody is biohacking and is biohacking himself, what does it mean to the others? This is an experiment of one. In fact, I argue that that's not an experiment if it's one. And I don't want at least to have things out there that haven't been studied, okay? If you, the biohackers, will take their millions of dollars and do a small study with many people that have the different genetic background and have some outcomes, and it could be reviewed in a paper, I would say, yeah, that is great. But otherwise, this is noise, and a dangerous noise.
Dr. Barzilai's work is in the field of conventional Western medicine. He says his efforts are a form of biohacking. Dr. Mark Zook says the same.
I love it. I practice it. I do it every day.
The medical director at Q Institute specializes in early disease detection and optimizing one's overall health. His background is in conventional medicine, like what Dr. Barzilai practices. But Dr. Zook's approach is different.
I sort of refocused my practice. Western medicine solutions are only used as a last resort.
He conducts diagnostics to understand someone's internal biochemistry and then provide the biohacks necessary. His reservation is in people taking the term and running with it.
Biohacking is based on the premise of hormesis. Hormesis is where a chemical or physical stressor to the body exhibits a positive biological response. The problem is it's all dose related, and if you overdo it, you can set someone back. So understanding those parameters, for example, cold plunging, we know that somewhere between 3 to 6 minutes is probably optimal. Anything more can be too much of a stressor, and it impacts our biology negatively. And the same goes for all other types of biohacks.
While he passionately considers himself to be part of the movement, he knows the field's limits.
I know when the limits of holistic or biohacking approaches are reached. And I know when it's time for Western medicine to intervene. Unfortunately, not everyone in the biohacking world has my experience in Western medicine to understand, hold on a second, what we're trying right now isn't working. It's time to go and consume Western medicine.
But biohackers like Jean and Sandy say all of their techniques come down to the use of natural elements, sunlight, water, minerals, and nutrients, and believe that Western medicine does more harm than good.
They're safer giving a pill because it is a tried and true standard of care that insurance and hospitals and courts can get behind. Telling a person who doesn't have a history of moving their bodies and eating clean that they should do those things is not a really reliable recommendation.
Dr. Elliot Dinetz agrees there might be some truth to that.
People want to live longer, live better, and we're not seeing that in primary care, of course, or the conventional medical establishment. We're seeing short visits, and we know the system has its issues.
The board-certified primary care functional medicine physician says that his work is the gap between legitimate aspects to biohacking and the traditional Western medical practices. His work is centered on lifestyle and the microbiome to figure out how to cure chronic illness and provide better quality of life. His concern with the biohacking space is with information being shared and by who.
We have biohackers with no medical background, training, or expertise, but become popular because of a podcast or because of a celebrity that they've treated, right? And I always say it's so important to look at word of mouth, right? But also the responsibility. If anything were to happen in the hands of such people, what do you think would happen? Would that person have repercussions? You want to work with people who are essentially licensed and insured to make sure they're doing what's in the patient's best interest.
According to Medical News Today, because there is little regulation of biohacking and many people do not report their findings, it is difficult to say what percentage of biohacking is successful. Most regulatory agents in the United States have unclear legal barriers for DIY biohacking and at-home experiments and do not enforce them. Dr. Dinetz wants those utilizing biohacking practices to do so with caution.
Under no circumstance do I think biohackers should have access to administering IVs and peptides. These are for certain medications that are intravenous and introduce a lot of potential harm and complication, and at best are just a waste of money.
Jean does do those biohacks. However, he doesn't consider himself to be extreme.
I'm trying to extend my life, not to die. Okay.
While he's one of the faces of the movement, he too recognizes its flaws, one of which is the cost to living longer.
When we love, we don't count. But I would say, when I started biohacking, I was taking maybe 100 supplements, which would cost about $2,000 a month, and using device that cost thousands of dollars. So I don't know how much I spent, but it's probably a lot.
According to a report by the Global Wellness Institute, the average American spends $5,300 every year on wellness. Most biohacking practices are not covered by insurance, making it out of reach for many who are hoping to optimize their life. In time, Jean is hoping that will change.
When Brian Johnson came up again saying, I'm spending $2 million a year on my health, the first reaction, even for me, was just like, I hate that. I hate that. Longevity should be mainstream, should be available to everyone. So we're not doing the right job by saying we're spending $2 million a year on our health.
Those like Sandy know it's a financial commitment.
So if I get I travel too much, get a couple of sniffles, I get an IV drip and I'm good to go. And that will cost me anywhere from $150 to I spent as much as $400 in London after a flight to an event in London. But I had no time to get sick. And so what is the cost of my time? And I'm fortunate enough to be in a situation where I can afford a $400 drip. I can't afford to get sick.
Even doctors who aren't considered to be in the traditional medical space charge hundreds or thousands for their treatments, but they believe the investment is worth it.
They have to ask themselves the right question of what's your number one priority? Because if it's health, you'll find yourself in the right place regardless of the cost. If people are gearing their health decisions, the most important asset they have in their life, based on a cost, yet they're spending money elsewhere, to us in this field, that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't add up. Because without health, while it might not be everything, everything else is nothing without it.
According to Keen Vu, the author of Thrive State, Your Blueprint for Optimal Health, Longevity, and Peak Performance, biohacking falls into one of these categories: lifestyle, molecular, biologics, and technology. Each of these faces consider themselves part of those groups. They may not agree on how to go about experimenting, but they do agree that biohacking in their preferred form is the future to making our lives better and helping us live longer.
What we are doing is creating a movement that will keep going across generations. Someone has to start the job, and it's our duty.
Sophia Hernandez, NBC 6 News.